make me drunk with art. Back in 2013, I lived in Baguio with my girlfriend at the time. It was kind of a new experience for me living so far from Manila where I've lived my entire life. My girlfriend then was a poet, and she had a lot of creative friends, fellow poets and writers, painters and artists, and illustrators as well. Being an artist in my late 20s living with a poet and hanging out with other artists, of course, there will be occasions like art exhibit openings and drinking sessions, and well, drugs too. But I'm used to that sort of thing already. I don't use drugs anymore now in my married life, because I found I'm more creative when I don't use them, and I only drink once or twice a year now and only on special occasions, just the average 1 to 2 bottles of beers with a pal. But back in the day, man, I used to do drugs, weed, every day, smoke cigarettes almost every 30 minutes, and drank liquor and be released once a week with pals and at parties or shows. A party animal if you will, and I can hold my own with the booze and weed too. In fact, I very rarely tap out or black out. Of course, it has happened before but only once or twice in the countless amounts of times I've been in drinking sessions. The reason I'm telling you this now is the crowd I find myself in at my new home in Baguio was like the ones I have here in Manila. Everyone drank and smoked and did drugs, albeit more than just weed, and we all had fun doing it. Although the new dynamic in the group of artists and friends there was me, I'm the new guy. I'm thrust into a circle like a sharp spear, just because I got a girlfriend belonging to that circle. They're a good enough bunch, really talented, and I learned a lot of new things from them as well. Although I could certainly point out one thing as being the new guy there, they kept getting me drunk. I don't know if it was because they wanted me to show my true colors, or lose my inhibitions enough to spill the beans on where my art powers come from, but sure enough, I felt that they wanted me drunk for one reason or other. Maybe it's the male macho thing, but I really didn't think so, or maybe it was. I'll never really know. Or maybe they just really like drinking a lot over there. But I like drinking too, but not that much. I still got a shit ton to do and getting drunk won't help me paint well. I'm not that kind of artist. And so, one night, like most nights, there we are again, drinking, and I realize that they're getting me drunk, again. I mean we're only just having a couple of beers, I mean beer is okay, but as a man Leno, give me something stronger, some gin or some whiskey perhaps, if you really want me to get drunk. At least if we do that, then we really have a party and you'll really see my true colors, though that's all in hindsight. What I thought of that night was, we're always drinking, but we're not really talking much about art. I mean, they're all artists, or at least in a creative field of some kind, but the ratio of the art we should be more addicted to is being overpowered and overshadowed by drinking and drugs. We've had a few really good art talks with these guys, but it's rare, I think once or twice only as far as I can remember. Not as much as all the Red Horse we consumed. It is as if maybe they can't do art or writing without the drugs or booze. Maybe it seemed that way because I didn't really know them that much, but every time I was there it was more of drinking and not enough art making or talking about art. Ernest Hemingway said, write drunk, edit sober. Which is what I think they're doing, but I don't think you should take that to heart, because there are a lot of sober writers out there who still write well and are fueled by liquid courage. Hemingway also wrote standing up and edited sitting down. Why not just follow that one if you're such a Hemingway fan? Maybe they were holding back their ideas and didn't want to let me know, that I can understand, but I think you can still talk about art and the craft, as you sip your goddamn beer and puff a few smokes without one spilling their own ideas they'd rather keep in the vault. But hey, why would you like for the other guy to spill his guts getting him drunk? I mean, the main reason I was there in the first place was to find inspiration to make more art, but not through stealing other people's ideas, but from nature in a different setting, and not by turning into an alcoholic. Maybe that's where they get their art powers. And so, I thought of the quote, 𝐶𝐿 𝐷𝐿 that very night. Meaning, I would rather you talk about art all day, all night, even without the sight of booze or a cigarette or a joint. That's how I started talking about art. I was at home with my high school friends, just shooting the shit with some soda and cheap Pinoy chichirya, and we still got a lot out of it. But in contrast, I was with a lot of talented artists now, but all they ever really wanted to do was to drink and one-up each other, with whatever they think will win them points in their book. Fuck that. Let's have a conversation about your philosophy, or at least what you think is the best way one can let his audience understand one's work and one's art. Or what do you think of this artist's work and his statement? Or what this painting means, or what this phrase in this poet's poem means. Let's get drunk about that. Just for the record, I do have friends who I can talk to about this kind of stuff, and they rarely need booze or any kind of drug to get their creativity triggered and have a good talk just about anything. Most of my friends who need no drugs or booze are like this, and they are my best friends, and more often than not, after we speak to each other, we all get something creative out of the conversation. Often a new project or collab is born, even if we didn't intend that in the first place when we meet. It just goes to show that a lot of people correlate art, drugs, and cigarettes into art making. I can see that and have been there and used all that before to stimulate the brain, and even enjoyed such vices with fellow artists, while catching up in an art show or chilling at home. But that's all just complimentary. That's not the meat of the show, nor how things should be in creativity. It would certainly be some sort of boost for some, but that route goes to dark places if you let that addiction overcome your creative process. If you're so dependent on it as an artist, when you use booze and drugs as fuel for your art, what are you when you are no longer able to use them and still need to create art? Inspiration should not be in the form of alcohol. It should be found within ourselves, to find out what inspires us to create, not get all drunk and messed up, so that we have the courage to make a mess on a canvas and call it art. We shouldn't rely on drugs and able to see some images in our heads hallucinating. We can already do that even without drugs, only if we're creative enough to use our imagination. I mean, try drugs if you want to. I did. It might really expand your mind and thinking, and you may like the experience, but don't be addicted to it, or at least be dependent on it to make art or to function in your normal everyday. If anything, we should be just more curious so that we can have the guts to ask questions or admit we don't know something. So that we can spark a conversation about almost anything, and we can discover a new thing or two that we don't know. In that way, we're captivated by it, and that's a more healthy way of stimulating one's mind. And little do we know that would be the seed for us to make our next work of art. There was also this one very well-known artist, who I won't name here. He's well off, and so he invited me to their home to hang out, and he loved to drink wine. But we rarely talk about art every time I was there. I got drunk silly with the wine, but he always tapped out before I did. I guess I really am a drinker by heart. Maybe a lot of people just want me to spill my beans on something or for me to black out and get knocked out for some reason, but that doesn't happen much. But it just surprises me that drinking is used as a weapon instead of a wonderful starter for a conversation and celebration. I do not mean to demean the people and artists I've come across in Baguio or in any drinking or drug-filled session. This is just my observation. And my best guess is, maybe they just really wanted to know me by getting me drunk all the time or every day like some brothers would when you're courting their younger sister. And boy, I've been to those kinds of drinking sessions too, and I often surprise these brothers, uncles, and whomever with my tolerance for alcohol too. The last thing I had a hard time quitting, aside from drinking and drugs, was cigarettes. I was having trouble writing or making art if I hadn't had a smoke first, unable to start creating like the cigarette was some sort of car keys, missing for me to start my engine. I thought to myself, are cigarettes really the key for me to make art? Or is this just a habit of mine that I let myself believe? Then I answered, no, this was not part of my art. Because I suddenly remembered when I was still in elementary school, I drew comics from afternoon to night, and even way past my bedtime. My parents didn't even know I was still awake to the wee hours. I was just drawing, and no one told me to draw that comic book but myself. It was just me, just wanting to draw. It was so much fun being able to create your own world, to draw and color it, and have the characters say what you wanted them to say. The art of creation was my drug. So when I remembered my young self, creating art without stimulation from anything, just the joy of creating, and seeing my work finished, and imagining it being shared the day after with my family and friends, that was my art fuel. That was where my art powers lie. Making art that I like and sharing them with others. After that, I quit smoking and made more art than ever before. So instead I say, don't get me drunk on beer alcohol, feed me art. Let me know your thoughts about this work or that artwork. I'll let you know my thoughts too. Let's get drunk about that. It's good if we either have fine whiskey or just lucky me pants a canton while we're talking, but even if you have nothing to offer me, and you only have art to talk about, I'm still all ears.